You are live.
Atenção, ajeitando o peito, Pelé. Pintou o adversário, vai marcar, atirou.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your favorite physical education and sports science podcast. We are talking directly from our hub of scientific and applied content, the Podium Sportcast. And yes, we are in the third season. More precisely, we are in our second bonus episode. But first of all, we would like to ask you if you are watching us. If you don't follow us in Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, we need to be honest with you. The only way we can continue producing so much nice content and to try to fight against this wave of fake news and influencers without no scientific background is if you help us. Therefore, the most uncomplicated way to do that is if you take your beautiful small finger or one of your fingers or all of them and press the button and help us and follow us and help us to sharing our content to your colleagues, family, and friends. Many thanks in advance. Our third season has a clear topic: how to be the best sport teacher in the world. And to help us to answer this question, we are more than happy to have Marc Garnica-Caparrós. Dear Marc, how are you?
Hi, all good. Thanks for the introduction. Good to be here.
Nice, nice. Mark, can you tell our audience a little bit more about your scientific career, your background, where you started, and maybe if you have some former experience as an athlete and where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mark, and originally I'm from Spain, but I've been doing my research in Germany for the last 3 years approximately. My background in terms of education is computer science. So I did study computer science back in Spain, and also I did a master, finishing the master in Berlin. And that's where I got to know the German Sports University of Köln. And I studied my PhD project here together with Professor Daniel Memmert. And basically, in terms of athlete, I never reached any professional levels, but I can tell I'm a basketball player, or like a former basketball player, and I'm still
Yes.
a huge sports fan. As my mom used to say, anything that had a ball in the TV, that was where I wanted to be watching it. So even golf, sorry for golf fans, but I was really interested in any sport.
Nice.
And that was something that really like called me and interested me a lot, and that's why I'm really happy to be researching in the intersection between sports and computer science, where if you're a bit aware of it, like there's this huge data analytics wave where, well, we know, and they know as well, in the sports clubs, that they can really get an advantage by using computer science, by using statistics to not only to prepare matches, but to scout players or to understand better some sports.
Nice. No, I do think, well, as a sport scientist, I do think there is a clear link between computer science and all the data analysis behind a sport performance, and they are quite well correlated. But do you think that we nowadays in 2023 have enough tools to make good predictions based on the past? Let's gonna say based on the former data that we had.
Yeah, I think we are there in the edge. So far, data analytics has proven to be really useful to more like understanding the past. So we're able to read the past and kind of understand why things happen that way. And more, there are now robust methods that actually help us predict. So, for instance, really applications that they are, for instance, in soccer, they're really useful to, for instance, predict injuries for soccer players. That's something that everyone in the sports industry is really interested in. So there's a lot of methods that now they're being taken into production, and that I think this is really interesting. But I'm pretty sure there's more to see. So methods need to be reliable. Of course, no one wants to predict something and then be wrong. So I think it's important to the methods to be that we can trust the methods, and also it's super important for all these data analytics track that we can actually explain predictions. So we don't want blind predictions that they say just A, and we don't care about the explanation, right? Especially from a scientific discussion, we really want to know why these models or whatever it's predicting certain things, right? So that's a bit the direction that the research is actually going.
Nice. And do you think that the data, if you go a little bit more in regard to performance, the data that we have about, let's gonna say one match. I was here in Germany, like it was Germany against Belgium.
Yeah.
Do you think that the data should be shared for both sides, or is responsible of one team to grasp the data and to use the data each that he one team or the other team has? How do you think about this? Because it's still public, you know. I don't know how to deal with this conflict of interest. How do you see that?
Indeed, there's a conflict of interest for sure, and there's a lot of discussions on who's the owner of such data, right? Like, because at the
Yes.
end, the owners, probably not only in soccer but in any professional sports, at the end, the athletes should be also the owners of their own data. But that's a bit of a discussion that also falls into this social media, and surveillance, yeah, status that we have currently in terms of, at least from soccer games. I would say from the last 10 years, a lot of work was repeated. So it was a pity to see how both teams were actually gathering the same data, doing the
Mm,
same processes, and then at the very end doing different analysis. Because depending on the team, of course, people are interested in some questions or some other questions. But from my computer science point of view, it was really, how can I say it? It was really frustrating to see how the same amount of work was done by both teams or by any team in any league, right? And then what is cool about it is that now external organizations like FIFA or other sports organizations are actually being a bit more interacting with it. So, for
mm,
instance, I would fully say that this German Belgium game that you watched, that it was a Nations League, I would say,
yes.
right? I would be quite sure, like 99% sure, that FIFA actually was in charge of the data collection, and not only they distributed to the teams themselves, but also they distributed to the research centers that they have in Switzerland, and it's a bit way more reusable, sustainable, and also like shareable.
This is quite interesting. As we have highlighted now, this conflict of interest can be this issue can be solved maybe with a hired institution, but
Yeah,
also again, how can we be sure that these institutions are not using the data for any other reason than only sharing the data? There is this way of thinking, well, now we could be dependent of FIBA for basketball, or EIF in handball, or FIFA in soccer. And I think there is still a issue that should be solved. In one sense that you have said was, I was thinking about this: who belongs this data? Also the athletes. So
yeah,
are we allowed to? How far is possible that we use data of the athletes
yeah.
and the team gets the info, but not the athletes? I know nowadays they are changing a little bit. They are giving a lot of data to the athletes, but they cannot read because
Yeah.
it's not about having the data. You have to understand what to do with the data, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's two sides of this, right? Like, from one side, I would say, if we only look at soccer players, they do sign contracts, and I'm pretty sure those contracts actually include any of these clauses for this data collection
Right.
and stuff. But I think where the issue is actually more prominent is on other sports, maybe not that famous or that popular as soccer, where clearly there's more money on the data generated than the actual sport. So I have friends on several Olympic sports that they really struggle to make a professional living out of it.
Really?
While like only the data that is generated from them, not only from the organizations that they work on the sport, but also betting companies, for instance, they generate a lot of data out of a lot of money out of that data. So I think it's getting better, but yes, as you were saying, I think the athletes should be the owners in a sense of this data, and it's getting more and more useful. And it's cool that you mentioned that athletes struggle to read about or analyze this data, but I think they're getting smarter or they know how the data is and how they can use it. And there's been cases on football players actually negotiating their contracts with data analysis, right? So they
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't
So
know
there
that.
was the Belgian player Kevin De Bruyne. He
Yes.
went back to his team and he said, "Look, I improved these statistics, and this, so I deserve whatever other contract." And that's how he managed to get a new contract, for instance. So
Wow,
I
this
think
is a
it's
nice
going to be
way
the
of
new.
arguing. Nice. I didn't know this. I'm not that in soccer scene in Europe. Interesting. Yeah, I think as you have mentioned once, the betting, how to bet and the use of former data to make predictions, and predictions may also be related to win or lose, and also with money. Now in Brazil is allowed. I mean, when I came to Europe, it wasn't allowed. I was so shocked because I lived close to one bet shop. I don't know or the
Yeah. Yeah.
bet place, and I was like, what do people does here? And then my wife said, well, they bet, and I said, how do they bet? I mean, is it allowed? And then she said, yeah, you can go there, and then and I said, no, I never saw this. There was like another world, and now it's allowed in Brazil. And I know that some professors they are develop some models going in direction a little bit of what you were saying at the beginning, and they are selling this. Really, I mean, selling as a 60% of be right or correctness, or 80, or this is more expensive because it's 90% correct. And this is a new market. Therefore, I was wondering, well, we have data out there. What to do with this? This is, yeah,
Yeah.
this is quite interesting point.
Yeah, it's certainly a nice opportunity for betting as well. But on that, usually what I'm saying, and I think I've been in contact with some of the most expert professors on the prediction of, for instance, soccer matches. And I think for anyone that listens or that wants to get into betting, they should know that the betting companies are the ones that know better. Like they do know, they do predict really, really well.
Yeah,
So even though you found your best model on how to predict the result of any competition, you should know that the betting company is also having it. So it's not as easy as just getting a good model and then you're gonna be profitable. Yeah.
quite nice. Well, we went really deep to computer science and modeling, but if we could go a little bit back to your own story.
Sure.
I think you also were a guy who were, as you have said, your mom's told you that you were always playing sports with the balls.
Yeah.
How how was your experience in sport, physical education back to Spain? How was it? Is it similar what you see here in Germany? Is it different?
Um, yeah, I'm not really sure. Like I haven't really got to know too much like the physical education here in Germany from high school or even earlier ages. I would say my journey was quite natural experiencing sports. So and I knew, so a lot of my classmates were always, enrolled in football clubs or basketball clubs or athleticism, whatever. And I basically just did any sport that my school was offering that year or those 3 months. Like these extra hours that you could stay at school and do more sport besides the PE, like the physical education, where we always did like multidisciplinary sports. And I think I really liked it that because for me that was part of just fun, right? Like I was performing any sport for sure. Now I know it was really healthy for me, and it was just natural for me to just get better at basketball, for instance. And at one point deciding, yeah, maybe I can also go to the club and maybe I get a spot on the team, blah 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 blah.
Nice.
But I just enjoy it, and I think I like it a lot because yeah, some 4 months I was playing tennis a lot, some other months I was playing football, and yeah, I think I just enjoy it. That was my journey. Um,
Nice.
I'm not sure here it's different. It's true that being involved in the German Sports University of Cologne is a bit of a new experience for me. In Spain, we do have sports universities. I'm not an expert on them, but I would say the experience, like the overall Spoho experience, I think it's something unique, probably like world unique. I think it's really good. I know high school students that they really have this goal. They want to go to this university, and they know they need to be fit, but also kind of skilled on a lot of different
Yeah, levels. Yeah.
activities. And I think it's really nice. I know also that the high school gets like a sports branch. So at one
Mm,
point when you're doing high school, you can select like a branch of your education that is dedicated to sports a little bit. Of course, you also do all the important lectures as well, but then and that I also didn't have it in Spain, for instance. I had
mhm,
my higher education was I could choose between biology sciences, technology, or artistic, like social sciences.
mhm.
I didn't have a sports. I think it's also super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Now in Germany and also in the school where I am now, we are really fighting to have sports as a Hauptfach, so main course that you can get with this course a grade important to access university if you want to
Mhm.
go to university. And this is actually a nice opportunity, I think, because we or many of my colleagues and me with some kind of scientific background, we can teach more than only play sports. So the story behind the biomechanics, the neuroscience behind, and also the other components. And this is what we are fighting to have this because you have to apply for this kind of level that we can offer this kind of Sportabitur is the name.
Yeah.
And if you can do this, will be really great. It will be
Yeah.
a nice achievement.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes, going in direction of sports and physical education. Today we will also talk about one paper that I was getting in contact, and I was thinking, well, this is a topic that I have heard about this, and we had in the second season we had the pleasure to have interviewed Johannes Meyer, and it was in German. The title was Wie beeinflusst eine zusätzliche Auswechslung Spielebelastung und Strategie? In German was in English we were talking about the paper, the impact of one additional substitution on player load and coaching tactics. But Mark and some of other colleagues from the German Sport University also have published, funnily, 1 year before, another paper called The Effect of Substitution on Team Tactical Behavior in Professional Soccer. Dear Mark, what is the story behind this paper? What was the motivation to write this paper with other colleagues? And yeah, how was it?
Yeah, so I would say as a story, I would say it has like two main roots. So on one side, as you mentioned, substitutions in football or in soccer has been something that really gained a lot of interest by researchers. First of
Mhm,
all, because there's different tournaments that have different rules, not only on professional level, but also if you look at the academy in soccer, on different ages, these rules actually changed. So it's always really interesting to see how this substitution rule affects the game itself. So that was a bit one of the motivations of the paper. On the other side, which is the other big part of the title you just commented, is that in our lab we are getting expertise in tactical behavior on soccer teams. What do we mean with tactical behavior? Usually, the research that has been done in soccer teams is really individualized or purely metrics. So we know that the team creates that many passes or makes that many shots, creates that many assists, crosses. But those are really just discretized summaries of the game. But we really don't know how 11 players versus other 11 players are actually interconnected between each other, and they're actually playing right, confrontating each other. That's what we mean with tactical behavior, how the 11 players are actually cohesively playing together. And for that, we developed a series of new metrics that they
mhm,
try to measure. So, yeah, what I said. So, the team cohesiveness, how the team is actually using the space in the field. So, and with both motivations, we just said, I think it would be super cool to understand the meaning of the substitution. So, what is the coach trying to change in the game? And
mhm,
see how is this change reflected in this tactical behavior, how my team as a whole not as 11 players, but as a whole object. How is this team changing by my substitution?
Mm. And I just checked again. You have checked 1,659 nine substitution from 234 matches. Well, it's a huge data set. This is
It is
fat.
indeed. It is indeed. We got it from the German Bundesliga.
Yeah.
By the time of the paper, it was quite recent, although it's 2 years, I think, old. But by now that we are speaking, it's even more older. So I think with more data, it could have even get improved. Yeah. But it was a really big data set. Yeah.
And the motivation was to understand more this behavioral part than only the descriptive part, you said, right?
Yeah.
And do you think that well, this was 2020, what would you add a new perspective or maybe a method in this paper if you could use nowadays, like 3 years after?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of tactical behavior, there's been a lot of other metrics that actually try to measure this space control in the field. So for sure, I would have add more metrics to a bit of like measure how the team is governing the space between the two teams. That will be my first addition for sure. Like using a lot of interesting contributions from the analytics field. Second, maybe driving a little bit away from the tactical behavior. I think I would really try to get more information on these substitutions. So we try to contextualize them a little bit, but I would really want to know if a team is way better than the other. So if there's a top ranked team facing a low ranked team, or maybe what's the score line in that moment of the game. So we actually track the score line, but I think anything that you can add to that context of the substitution, I think is super valuable. So now with more data that we have, I'm pretty sure I would have increased that context so we can classify these substitutions even more.
Yeah, maybe you can tell our audience how you classify the data, because again, it's that much. It's a huge data set. How did you classify the substitutions? I know because I read the paper, but yeah.
So we, as you said, we didn't find that many research before that tried to do something similar. So we were based in a couple of papers that they did some classification of the substitutions. Important to know is that with this data set, for every game, we also knew the positions that each player was playing. And these positions were not super accurate because at the end, every coach defines their defense with a 3-4 line, whatever. But we knew pretty much. So player A is playing as a center defender and player B is playing as a forward, for instance. So we knew that. And also for the substitutions. So a certain player that is coming in the game, we also knew that he was about to be located as a left winger, for instance. So with this information, what we tried to do is categorize the intentions of the substitution. So for that, we came up with 3 classes of substitutions. So there are offensive substitutions, the neutral substitutions, and the defensive substitutions. And those were based purely in the positions of the players in and players out. So if the coach puts a defender out to put an attacker, that's an offensive substitution. The coach wants to boost the attack, wants to create more chances.
Nice that you explained this, because this will be my next question. Because I would say, well, normally at the end of the game, you take one position that you don't see a lot of necessity at the moment and put some extra effort to make an extra goal. So most of it should be okay. Got it?
Yeah, and so far so on, right? Like the defensive substitution, then what we categorize it is as the coach is putting out some attacker or some offensive player and is putting in another defender. So that's a defensive substitution. And then all the rest we classify it as neutral. So if the 2 players are in the same position or the players are in the midfield, so we just classify it as neutral. And this is a really basic classification. That's what I was telling you. If now I would repeat the study, I would go for way more context on why this substitution was made.
Got it. Yes, and when I was reading the paper, also something popped up in my mind, and this was that you have yeah, at the end you say something. This I will just read for you. Soccer's coaches should perform more offensive substitution to enlist a higher defensive pressure and improve goal scoring opportunities. So it's funny because I will say this. Maybe this is not scientifically based, but I knew this before. I mean, it sounds that what people may have as an instinct saying, well, it may work most of the time. It does. So the data somehow endorse this way of thinking. If I
Yeah.
take someone that is playing in defense to have more opportunity to score goal, it works.
Yeah, definitely. So that's what we looked at it, and we looked at it about with different metrics, and all of them were approaching a more offensive team style for sure. I have to say it's a limitation of the paper, but you never know the egg and the chicken thing, right? So
Yeah.
you never know what's the source and what's the consequence. So the teams needed to be offensive, and that's why they do the substitution. You know,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
we never know. We would never know if without the substitution, the team would have not also been more offensive just by the game. So
Yeah.
because we cannot just know what would happen if the substitution was not there. That's what we cannot see. But it's true. We really found two really nice things on offensive substitutions. The first one was the obvious one. So the team was creating more chances. The team was advancing more in the field. But the second one was also that the team was more secure in the defense. So
Ah,
that the team was saved enough. But that's basically what Guardiola always says, that the best defense is not to lose the ball and be on your, like, control the ball. So that's if you put an attacker and then you put pressure on the attack, the other team can only do defending. So they cannot, like, they cannot counter attack in that way.
mhm.
So that was our message, that offensive substitutions not only improve the chances on offensive actions, but also allow you for a better control.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I like the methodology behind this paper. Great. Um, and going a little bit more in direction of physical education, which
Mhm.
I know for you is a quite funny environment. I mean, we still understand. Yesterday we have Professor Svenja Wolf from Florida State University, and she does a lot of about um, collaborative and group emotion, something related to group, not only to one special person, and yeah, self-reflection and collective emotion. I was wrote collective emotion, and then I will say, yeah, I like the idea. It may work for performance, but how do you apply this content at school? So we have a really deep discussion, and I like it. And if we go to another environment, let's gonna say we have a competition at school. For
Yeah.
example, in Germany, we have almost four competitions for different sports at school level per year. And my school is quite active, not that successful as I wish, but maybe therefore I am there. Hopefully, it will change in the future. But we also have this way of thinking how to select the best to come to play for the school team, but also when to change the guys that are playing, maybe if they are tired or under pressure. So my question is the following: do you think that if we tracked scholars also at the scholars level, we also could have a result in direction of your paper? Do you think that we could have the similarity? So let's gonna just change the level. It's not Bundesliga, so at school level. Do you think
Yeah.
that could have something like related, or do you think that is only because of the performance level is different than school level?
Yeah, I'm not sure the final conclusions, that I'm going to elaborate on it later. But in terms of what we see on the data, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't, because on professional level there's a lot of tactical knowledge that like you cannot
Mm.
ignore. I would say that. And also, at least from my perspective, on physical education, on lower levels in scholars, I think it's super important playing time. um,
Mm.
Nothing else, like. And I've read quite a lot of studies on youth academies in basketball or also in soccer, where they don't want to classify the players in positions. They do not want to tell a player in a very young age to be like, yeah, you're gonna be a forward or you're gonna be a left winger, or they they
No, then why? Why?
they prefer that the players kind of like learn the game at every sense. Like when you were playing in the playground with your friends, you were not the forward, you were not the midfielder. Like you were just playing as you wanted. Sometimes you needed to defend. Sometimes if no one wanted, you were the goalkeeper. And that's I read a lot on that, specifically not only in soccer but also there are work in US that really proposes that in young ages, kids should not be specialized on a certain sport. They should
Hmm.
play, and that actually benefits the success on a specific sport. So a lot of professional athletes nowadays, they actually played way more than one sport when they were
Hmm.
kids, because that's a whole. I'm not an expert on it, but that's a whole transfer learning and motor control and motor development. So the more different inputs and outputs that you can teach your body, like tennis has completely different motor control and motor calibration learnings and than basketball or soccer. And I think the more, especially in young ages, the more the kids can just like get out of the environment, the better. So
This is great because finally we have also one episode with Valeria Eckhart, and she's a sport
mhm,
psychologist,
yeah,
and you may know her as
yeah,
well. A nice girl. I like her a lot, and she's doing a lot of research about the parenting, so the impact of
yeah,
parents on children's performance. And we were doing this in German, and once she said, because I was a former handball player, and she
mhm,
was talking, yeah, and you, Walter, how was your past? How was the how did you see the figure of your parents at for your sport performance? And then it was the nicest experience for me. I was almost live, and then I was say, "Das stimmt." How was that? So I didn't know how to answer because I always do the questions. So I got the question and say, huh, I don't know.
yeah,
But I think the way of saying, or this way of thinking that you just have said, that not specializing a lot at the early ages also protect them for frustration. And as she has also said this, and also some kind of, yeah, fear to fail, because I am tall. I just have to be a torwart, a goalkeeper. If I'm tall, if I'm not
yeah.
torwart anymore, a goalkeeper, I lose my sense of belong to a team. So, and this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I think that's probably what at early ages is quite the priority, I would say, right? Like, and in terms of what a similar analysis would get out of scholars playing, yeah, I'm not sure. That's why probably substitutions in that age is a way different rule. When I was coaching basketball, like you were allowed to put in, put out, whatever you want, and actually I had some rules like like kids needed to play a certain number of minutes, like a minimum, and then also a maximum. So you cannot just play the better team, the better kids all the
Yeah,
time.
I love these rules. There are some in Brazil in handball. I remember there were some leagues that you have to change guys,
Yeah.
put in and put out. You have to, uh, and also that you have some system of defense that you have to use in the first 10 minutes, and then you can change.
Uh-huh.
I remember this in handball as well. Yeah, going a little bit more in direction of physical education, but the figure as a sport teacher. Well, you have faced many in your life as a student or a scholar. Once we have made a pool of questions in our Instagram account, Podium Sportcast, and we have asked them some questions, and the questions were more related. What are the three major problems that you face as a sport teacher? Well, now for you as a computer scientist doing research in soccer to answer these questions is quite impossible. You don't have to, but I want to know your opinion about some of these three topics. Maybe you can just pick one uh, up and talk about this. So they have highlighted three problems. The first problem they said that they face as a sport teacher in Germany is that they are not able to find a qualitative work, scientific work, and when they face this work, they are always publishing in English. So they cannot, they understand the words, but they don't understand the meaning. So the words, so they could not find scientific work that they can understand. This was the first barrier or the problem that they face. The second problem was that they said, well, if I want to learn more about physical education, not only Germany, but worldwide, it's too expensive. And I can't afford for this. So they were saying that price is a barrier that, yeah, well, how do I say this? That make a kind of wall to get access to another content, because they basically are in one school in Germany. If you are in one school, it's quite hard to change to another school if it is in the same city and so on. They said, well, I got an opportunity to learn 3 years, then I got my Referendariat, which is an external education point, but then I got this and I have to treat this for the next 30 years of my life. So they don't get any new continuing education. And the third point, I think this is also yesterday, the assistant professor Sven both said this is also a situation in US, and I can say this also in Brazil, that they said we are low paid. So if you can pick up one of these three topics and just to give your opinion about this will be nice. So education, scientific content is complicated and low payment. You can pick one of this.
Yeah, I think I would like for the second one.
Go ahead.
It's probably true that there's like a price wall on knowledge or in scientific content, but I would say this is really like rapidly changing, right? Like I don't know, in my field and like in my application field, which is like research in sports analytics. Nowadays you can find a lot of content online, and that I'm saying it personally. It might be that in other fields it's not the same, but I would say you have to really have questions, right? Like when you don't have the real question, you never find content, of course. And that's difficult. I'm not saying it's trivial to really know what you're looking for, but I think that's, or at least my message on that second topic will be a bit of optimism that I think this is going to change. Like the work is getting more open sourced and more, like open access to everyone. I think in that sense, if you really want to get the content, I think you should be able to find the ways to do it.
Yeah, and I do think, for example, what we are doing right now, we are, for example, not showing a name of the paper, we are showing our faces. And this is quite nice because I remember I have still this experience that I will never forget. And I interviewed this guy in the first season. I have a professor, and I made one university in Brazil. It was Universidade de São Paulo, Guarulhos, and then the second one was Universidade de São Paulo. It's two cities close to each other. And in my first bachelor, this guy published a lot about basketball. A lot. I mean, he was the god of teaching basketball in Brazil.
Okay.
And my impression was basketball. Strong, tall guys, maybe black guys. And they use some kind of US ghetto t-shirts. And I was having this image of the professor was like this. Like, really. And then I moved to the other university. In this professor that I read the books about teaching basketball, he was a professor there. And maybe he will see this in the future and he will laugh again. And he was small. He was like that size, and he wasn't that black, and he wasn't black at all. And he wasn't kind of formal guy, a typical guy. And then I said, wow, how can be that I connect the topic with a person, but it's a huge mismatch. It's a huge mismatch. But when we give our phrase to the paper, say, oh, look, this is Mark. He's a computer scientist that worked with soccer. This is Walter. And I think this is also a nice opportunity to give. We do a nice move. In my opinion, we are doing a nice thing, showing our faces and talk about what you like and what we publish. This is
sure. I think research should be as transparent as shared as possible. And a bit what I was saying. I think stuff like this podcast, I think it's making good work on that direction. Yeah.
Nice. Well, Now I have interviewed your whole family, if I can say. No, just for the audience. I finally have. I didn't know before, but I have interviewed Marc's girlfriend, and if you want to watch, she was in one of these episodes. I think it was the third episode of this season. Great. Marc, heading to the final, do you have any final thoughts to share with us? Maybe someone who is in now in computer science wants to move to sports or something related to your private experience?
No, I think thanks for the topic on physical education. I really like to like maybe I'm saying things that doesn't make sense, but
No,
I
no,
think
no,
I like
it's
making
fine.
opinions
It's
on
fine.
other things. I was thinking that like I was getting ready for a question such as how my field can be a motivation for physical education
Wait,
in
I have a
high school.
question. How can be your field?
That half of my brain was just trying to get because I honestly at the beginning I was a bit like, yeah, how am I gonna be linking those two topics? And I really like something that one of my high school teachers actually told me not that
Look,
long ago. When we were catching up, we were just updating each other, and I was like, yeah, I'm in Germany. I'm actually working on sports research, and he was like, but didn't you study computer science? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm actually applying it, and it's the best thing I could have done. Blah blah blah. And I think one thing we kind of oversee is the huge impact that sports has in anything. Like sports is in our life in almost everything, right? Like and for physical education in high school, you just think, yeah, they just want me to get fit, or at least to to do the 13 kilometers test and to do whatever else and to play some sports. But it's actually they are getting you into what it's probably driving you all your life.
yes.
Like I'm a sports fan, and I'm always going to be a sports fan. And and now even my work is related to sport, and a lot of other works now that it doesn't need to be sports related, but a lot of people is actually living out of sport, and I
Mhm.
think it's super cool. And physical education should be also taken into account for that. Like thanks to PE teachers, you actually got to know sport and you really like it. I think it's also super good.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And I think what you have said at the beginning also shows that there is not a straight line to be a sports scientist or to be a
Sure, sure.
scientist in sports field.
Yeah,
And this is what I like the most. We always have this thinking, well, I have to be a former athlete to be able to be a sports scientist.
yeah,
And this
yeah,
is
yeah.
well, maybe it was in the past. It's fine if it was in this way. But I do see in your background that this is important for you to have a positive experience in sports as a student, but also that you decide to use computer science in sports.
Yeah.
Nice. Dear Mark, I sincerely appreciate. I'm sorry again for my delay. Having two
Oh,
children at home, you have to manage with changing the pampers and trying to read a new book to make them sleep.
nice.
I really appreciate your late time. It's a lot for me. I really like it. Yeah, it was my pleasure to have you here. And for our audience, we will send the link. Actually, we will put the link in our descriptions about what the paper we talked to about today with Marc. I will just read the name again. The effect of substitutions on team tactical behavior in professional soccer. So it's professional soccer. If you want to do this with the scholar soccer in the future, you have a contact now. So
Sure.
yeah,
I'll
this
be
will be,
all right.
this will be a nice contact. Nice. Jean-Marc, have a wonderful night. I sincerely appreciate. I know that Steffi is in Ireland now.
Yep,
Uh,
actually.
and yeah, say hello to her when you see her again. It was
I
my
will.
pleasure to have you on board. Thanks again. And I really like and appreciate this. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Now I will put the final intro here. Look, don't get shocked, please.